Good evening. Open heart, open mind. Welcome to the Sattva channel, the official online platform of the Sattva project. First of all, on behalf of the Sattva project, I would like to express our thankfulness to our StreamYard sponsor and media partners, Durian ASEAN and Durian FM. And not to forget also the important man behind the scene, our broadcast director, Brother Chong. Thank you very much for your generous contribution and kind efforts. Hi, Brother Chong. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in this evening. Hi. And please do like and share so that more people can benefit from our broadcast. And for those watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and also share. Now, back to you, Ram. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Chong. Today we'll be discussing about the big topic on mistaken views and misconceptions about Buddhism, focusing on mistaken views about merit. So we will go into different things on merit, virtues, etc. So let me introduce our speakers here today. First, of course, myself, I'll be the coordinator today. I came from IT and telecommunications background, having worked in both Asia and the West. And I have a master's degree in IT and now also been certified as an Aristotle's Cafe discussion facilitator. And I have an interest in meditation and Buddhism for most of my life, I would say. So thank you. And next will be Professor Mattia. Professor Mattia Salvini is presently the Dean of Scriptural Languages and the Faculty of the Liberal Arts at the International Buddhist College, Thailand. He has an Bachelor of Arts and Masters of Arts in Sanskrit from RKM Vivekananda College from Chennai, India, and a PhD in Buddhist Studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, from London. Welcome, Professor Mattia.
Thank you, Sawadee.
Next is Achan Bibek. Bibek Sharma, he was born in Nepal, finished his Bachelor of Arts in Buddhist Studies and International Buddhist College, Thailand. Further, he completed his Master of Arts in Buddhist Studies in Fogyong University from Taiwan, where he learned classical Buddhist Chinese and translated a correspondence between Kumarajiva and Huiyuan to complete his Masters of Arts thesis. For his PhD, he joined Mahidol University, where he is currently working on Yashomitra's Abhidharma Kosha, Vyakyaha, and a sub-commentary on the Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya to complete his PhD thesis. Currently, he is translating the first chapter of Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya as translated by Xuanzang for BDK in Japan. He reads Chinese, Sanskrit, Pali, and French, apart from his own mother tongue, Nepali. Welcome, Achan Bibek.
Thank you, Ram.
Next is Bem Mitruev. Bem Mitruev is a translator from the Tibetan language. From 1995 to 2005, Bem studied at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Varanasi in India, where he studied Tibetan history, poetry, Buddhist philosophy, Tibetan language, Sanskrit, and Hindi. Bem received the degree of Acharya, Master of Buddhist Philosophy. He currently works as a translator for the Buddhist teachers who come to Russia to teach. Welcome, Bem. I think we have some connectivity problem with Bem, so he will be coming on. And Professor Giuliano will not be joining us tonight. I'm sorry about that. So we will. So the main topic for the discussion today will be about merit, and of course we will relate to other issues like other points. Virtues, roots of virtues, roots of merit, and things like this. What is meritorious and what is not meritorious? What is virtue and what is not virtuous? So maybe we can start with, say, some textual reference to what is merit. Maybe I can ask or request kindly Professor Mattia to perhaps start on the give us some formal definitions or knowledge on how to define merit as such.
I think there is a nice definition by Aryadeva, according to which, in brief, the Dharma is ahimsa. So we can start from that to understand somewhat the logic of what it means to engage in a virtuous behavior as opposed to non-virtuous one. So that which is going to harm others and oneself is going to be non-virtuous, and vice versa. I think the basic logic probably is this, but of course I think we can hardly go much beyond the basic logic in some sense, because the maturation of karma is actually regarded as one of the things that are somewhat inconceivable, and one should not even try to analyze too much. One of the achinteya in Pali, one of them is karma vipaka. And I think this is because the exact workings of merit, the exact workings of karma, are not within the scope of an ordinary person's perception. And therefore, although maybe we can understand in general terms, it is very hard to sometimes know very precisely what is going to be virtuous, what is going to be non-virtuous, and which type of action or intention rather is a heavier kind of demerit. There's also distinctions in terms of short-term versus long-term negative effect, or different kinds of negative or positive karma, so that also has to be taken into account. Maybe what is useful is to think about the definitions of karma, which have to do with intention, cetana. So karma is of two types. Either it is cetana, which is an intention, and that is manas karma. It's mental karma, and that is accompanying each moment of the mind. And then there is cetayitva, that which follows an intention, and that is speech karma as well as body karma, which means that only those activities of speech and body which follow certain intentions can qualify as merit or demerit. Maybe that is what comes to mind when you ask about merit in a general term. There's also a certain type of positive karma, which is somewhat different from the ordinary merit, and that is the immovable karma, and that is produced by meditative absorption, and this can result in being born in the rupa and arupya dhatus. So that may be something we may want to include when we discuss this idea.
Thank you, Ajahn Mattia. I don't know if Bem and Bibek have heard. Ajahn Mattia just went through the general overview of what is a merit, and basically he defines it as the base. It has the basis on the ahimsa, and of course it is related to karma and other things that he has explained. So do you have anything to add to that, Ajahn Bibek or Bem? Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. I can hear you. I just was waiting for Bibek to answer something. Well, basically, what Dr. Mattia said is very true, and actually, I didn't have much to anything to add. To add, can you hear me? Is the sound okay? Okay. Yes, and when we talk about the merit in Abhidharma Kosha, it is said that there are two kinds of actions, and those actions that are mental and physical actions. And so, before we act physically, we think about our action. So, in any action, virtuous or not virtuous, it seems that our mind is predominant. I mean, our mind is the main actor, the main doer of the action, so to say. So uh, if you are moved by a virtuous mind, by a virtuous thought, then probably your action will be virtuous. Otherwise, I do not think that we can judge any action virtuous or not virtuous just from the point of view of the physical action itself or verbal action itself. As we talked before about that, seems like motivation is the deciding point. The motivation, our strive or our mind, that's what makes this or that action virtuous.
Thank you, Bem. Vivek, do you have anything to add on this point before I go to the next point?
Thank you, Ram. My main problem today is that I didn't hear most of what Mattia said or Bem said. So your question is basically what is merit, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it is a one of the most important components of you can say Buddhist path. Like when can you hear me? Hello.
Yes. Very well. Very well.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I was saying that this is one of the most important aspects of a Buddhist path. So there are mainly two aspects, let's say, of the Buddhist path. One is that you are going to remove something negative from your mental continuum, and one is you are going to create something positive in your mental continuum. And most of the things, and then that will yield the final result, right? Or let's say bodhi. So most of the things that we do in a Buddhist path that pertains to creating this positive thing can be termed as a punya or the merit. Of course, there are other terms also, but in general, it can be said that one generates this merit in order to obtain the Buddhist final goal. Now, when we talk about this merit, it is slightly, as far as I know, slightly it is explained slightly differently, and the way it is accrued and the names and so forth. Like let's say in the Sravaka paths like Theravada, so mainly three things are emphasized, and that is dana, and that is one thing, and then the mental cultivation, um, and then sila. So these are the main three ways to generate the positivity in your mind. And as far as I remember, I don't remember which commentator, but one of the Theravada commentators, he says that it is something that purifies your continuum, let's say the santati, our mental continuum. So mainly this is from the Shravaka perspective, and then more or less, I think this is the general map that almost all the Shravaka paths will follow. And in the Mahayana, let's say mostly because it is the paramitas are emphasized. So among the 6 paramitas, the first 5 paramitas are considered as the merit, and that is, and all of them are generated so that one can attain the 6th, one can achieve the 6th. So, well, most of the things were covered as far as I can hear earlier. So I just wanted to emphasize on this point that there are 2 parts mainly in any Buddhist path. One is that you generate something positive, and second is you remove the negativity. And that positive can be termed as, in general, as merit. That's how I understand.
Okay, thank you, Bibek. Mattia, do you have? I think you might have some comments to add, or I mean, do you think your view is different from Bibek or Ben's, or we cannot hear you, Ajahn Mattia?
Sorry, I was muted. No, only one point I may like to add, that there exists also a slightly different view regarding the relationship of the 6 paramitas and 2 accumulations. And this alternative view, which I'm a bit more familiar with, is that the first 3 paramitas, so dana, shila, and kshanti, relate to the accumulation of merit. Virya relates to both accumulations, and the last 2 relate to the accumulation of awareness, the jnana sambhava. So this is an alternative way. That's the one I'm a bit more familiar with. That's the only thing I would like to add.
Okay, thank you. We will not go too much into that. I think we kind of get some basic ideas of what is merit. Now, I have heard the word virtue. Maybe Ajahn Mattia, you can present some Sanskrit root words on merit and virtue, and how are they different first? Maybe the word for merit in Sanskrit and for virtue, and maybe Bem, you can point these out in Tibetan after Professor Mattia. Thank you.
Yes, there are many words actually which we end up translating as merit, I think, and which overlap more or less in their meaning. So the word which I think is most commonly translated as merit, I think, is punya. And I can kind of see why it could be translated as merit, but I'm not sure that it really matches the etymology. I think it's something different. I would have to think about it a bit. The word that I usually translate as virtue, and some would translate as wholesomeness, for example, is kushala. And that word also is explained in several different ways. There is even an explanation which relates it just to ability or skill, such as kushamlati, somebody who cuts the very sharp kusha grass. But I think in that sense, virtue is not so bad, because we also speak of a virtuoso, for example, when we want to speak of someone who has a lot of skill. So these are the words that come mainly to mind. Then there are other words also, like shubha. Shubha is also used as a synonym of merit. We see it also maybe in some dedications of merit. And Shubha means something like goodness, something lovely or good is Shubha. So these are the main words which are used in Sanskrit and also in Pali, with a very small variation because Sanskrit and Pali are very, very close. These would be Sonam, Gewa, and Shubha. I do not remember. Bem would know which one would be Shubha.
Thank you, Professor Mattia. Bem, perhaps you can help us on the Tibetan, on the merit and virtue.
That's one of the difficult questions, because as Mattia said, there are many Sanskrit terms that are translated into Tibetan as virtue or merit, and at the same time, there are many terms that are used as equivalents of the Sanskrit terms in Tibetan. But if we try to look at the idea itself, what does it mean? What does it mean? Virtue or merit, is sometimes they translate, because those two translations are used like interchangeably. You can say virtue, some people say merit, and the idea itself, it's quite interesting. So basically, what does it mean? From one point of view, we could think that it means some kind of good behavior or good actions. At the same time, it must be something that eventually leads you to, as partially, one of the causes for obtaining the Buddhahood. So it's quite a difficult question. But as far as remember, in many actually Tibetan commentaries, it is said that virtue is what brings your happiness, and so basically unvirtue or something not wholesome, that's what brings you unhappiness. So but there's, I mean, about the terms that Mattia mentioned now, that Shubha, Punya, and etc. Sometimes it's quite difficult for me, at least, to differentiate between those terms, the meaning of those terms. I hope you can hear me. Okay. So it's quite difficult sometimes to differentiate. And I remember when I tried to find out what is the difference between those terms, seems to me that there is no difference, but sometimes they are used instead, one instead another. So difficult for me to say, but as I said before, it must be something like that Geva, or the virtue or merit, is the reason for you to experience happiness, and unvirtue is the opposite.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Yes, I can understand that the definitions and overlapping usages and etc. But you mentioned one thing, the cause of happiness, right? So if I have to think from my very, very limited mind, I think eventually we have to transcend the happiness and unhappiness, or the suffering, right, altogether. So is merit or virtue, or merit slash virtue, required for transcending happiness and unhappiness, or it just leads to happiness? That's the question that came to my mind. uh, do you understand my point?
Yeah, I understand your point. Eventually, when you become a Buddha, I think that you must go to the level beyond suffering and happiness. Otherwise, there would be no point to strive to become a Buddha if you still are not beyond those mundane things, beyond that limit. But in many Mahayana texts, it is said that the mind of Buddha is blissful. He doesn't have suffering, and his mind is blissful in probably in terms that he doesn't have any suffering anymore. And of course, you need to go beyond, but before you go beyond something, you need to arrive at the point. So if you do not have those two sambhara, if you do not have those two accumulation of merit and wisdom, you are not able to go to that state. You are not able to go to the state of Buddhahood. So this is one of the forces that pulls you, that allows you to obtain that state. And usually it is said that the merit is the cause for the form body, rupakaya, and the wisdom is the cause for obtaining the mind of the Buddha, the omniscient mind.
So I'm going to dig a little bit further, since we have a very good point here, I believe. Let's say merit brings happiness, leads to enlightenment. So, but I have seen on many instances, of course, I cannot specifically name a text. There was instances where suffering actually leads to enlightenment and not exactly happiness. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, what I need to say is that if you remember the four truth, if you remember the so-called four noble truth, some people say that they are not noble. They are truths of the noble. So the truth itself is not noble. It belongs or is contained in the mind of the noble, of Arya persons. That's why it's called so. But no difference. As remember, in the first truth, Buddha said, you need to remove, or you need to abolish suffering. Then he says that you need to remove or abolish or destroy the source of suffering. So between two things that we need to accept or practice, and what we need to leave or to get rid of, suffering is something that we need to get rid of. So what does it mean? It means that it will not go with you to the Buddhahood, and it cannot be a direct cause for the Buddhahood. Does it mean that we cannot use suffering? No. As they say in the East, for a wise person, everything could be positive. Everything could be used in a positive way. And of course, in the scriptures, it is said that if you do not experience suffering, you will not have this strife. You will not have this. You will not have this mind to release yourself from the suffering. If you do not experience suffering, you will not understand how the sentient beings, other sentient beings, also suffer, also experience this suffering. And so in this way, that's one of the differences, as they say in the scriptures, between us and the gods of the higher realms. In the higher realms, they do not have suffering. This way, they do not have this intention to get rid of the suffering, to liberate themselves from the suffering. So, of course, suffering is very important and could be used in the positive way, but it's not one of the direct causes of the enlightenment.
Thank you, Ben. Bibek, have you been able to follow us a little bit in the last few minutes?
Yes, I heard, and then now I got your question too. Yes, whatever I heard, I mean, it was cut off. My internet is not good, but whatever I heard Bem saying about the happiness and the merit, I think I agree. The most important point is the Buddha's teachings. It has several skill and means. So, of course, the most important thing is to kind of bring people, sentient beings, out of the samsara. But at the same time, that can only happen slowly, gradually. So it happens in a very gradual way, that first you are in a, let's say, miserable state, and then you slowly bring them to a better situation, better existence and a better condition where you get the Dharma, and the better existence situation where you can practice Dharma. And then only that would be a platform for those sentient beings to go towards the ultimate freedom, right? So from a limited freedom, from a very miserable state to limited freedom, and then to ultimate freedom. So this is the kind of a map that we find in the Buddhist path. So here the merit plays the role for the sentient beings to achieve that temporary happiness at least, or relief from the sufferings of the samsara, so that they will get some chance and opportunity to practice dharma, even to think about dharma. Actually, it is said that it is very difficult to even have some positivity in the mind, because the samsara, many of the realms are so miserable that you cannot even think of something positive, and the mental continuum of the sentient beings are so stained, or it is so you can say polluted, that they cannot have a very positive ideas in their mind. So they cannot go towards even the dharma, they cannot generate the faith, and so on and so forth. So that's how the path is kind of created in a way. And as Bem said, it is true that the nirvana is uncaused. If it was something caused, then there will be a lot of consequences. Something caused means it depends on cause and conditions, and when you remove the cause and conditions, then the thing does not exist. But that is not the thing with the nirvana. It is supposed to be, let's say, for the sake of explaining here, it is a permanent state, a state of permanent state of happiness where there is no suffering. That's one point. And another point, I think, about the suffering, as Bem explained, it is like if you have a thorn and you use the thorn, another thorn, to remove the first thorn from your skin, right? So in the same way, first you are explained that the some whole samsara has defect, it is full of suffering, and so on and so forth. But actually it is just conceptual. You did not you misunderstood the real nature of the things, and you were deluded, and so on and so forth. But slowly the path will help you to understand the reality, and at the end you understand the true nature of all the phenomenon, and you attain the nirvana. So the the part the suffering plays here is that, okay, temporarily it is used in order to bring you to the ultimate bliss or nirvana. So the deluded state, you suffer. You are not deluded, you have a clarity about the reality, you do not suffer. So this is somehow in brief that I could say on this point.
Thank you, Ajahn Bibek. Ajahn Mattia, I would like to invite you to speak next, but before I go there, I want to ask Bibek, since he is fluent in Chinese, do you have any translation or that you can say for the word merit and virtue? Are they different in the Chinese translation? Yes, Vivek, can you hear us?
No, I did not hear you clearly. Can you
Yes.
ask the question again?
In Chinese, do you have the word for merit and virtue? Are they same or different?
Yes, of course. In well, one of the things about Chinese Buddhism is that when Dharma was translated into Tibet, it was kind of regularized. Let's say that they created one lexicon, and then according to that lexicon, many of the things were more or less regularized when you compare with Chinese. But when we talk about the Chinese Buddhism, what happened was, during the course of 300 years, the text started to flow inside China through many different translators, and the Dharma practitioners and monks and so forth. So they have used three different let's say the translations done during that period, we can say that it was earlier, middle, and the old translation. So they have used slightly different terms, more or less, but yes, in general, we do have terms for the punya, and also the merit, and also for the papa, the demerit, also for kusala. As far as I remember, some even transliterated some of these terms, so some of the translators. So yes, we have these terms.
Do you mind saying some in Chinese so we can hear? Do you mind saying them in Chinese? These words?
Yes. Well, I don't remember all those terms. Let's say you can say merit punya kongda. That is one of the common terms, I think. And well, offhand, I just could not remember all the terms right now. So yeah, that's one term I could tell you.
Thank you, Bibek. Back to you, Ajahn Mattia. So about merit again, and the is it truly the cause of happiness, going beyond happiness, etc., that you heard from Bem and Bibek just now? What's your view on that?
I think I agree with what has been said. One could also put it in a different way, but it actually boils down to the same thing, which is merit is not a direct cause for liberation, but without merit, one will not encounter the circumstances to gather the direct cause of liberation. So in that sense, merit is very much necessary, and I think it's a matter of having sustainable circumstances in order to then develop the wisdom of selflessness, which is going to actually result in liberation. So I think one can understand it in that way. Your question is a bit tricky because one uses the word happiness in different ways. So in a certain sense, of course, at some point one goes beyond happiness and its opposite, if we are using the word in that sense. But it's also true that sometimes people use the word happiness referring to nirvana itself. So in that sense, we're not talking anymore about the type of happiness which we experience within samsara, but we're talking about happiness perhaps in the sense that you intended, of going beyond the alternation of the happiness and suffering. So that's what makes the question a little difficult, because we can use it in both ways.
Thank you, Ajahn Mattia. So what about if we specifically refer, if possibly refer to some text, of course, which you can recall. What about virtue? And can you perhaps let us know some difference, or is it just technical difference and the intention is the same?
I agree with Bem that it's actually it's quite difficult. Very often these terms like punya and kushala, merit and virtue, are used more or less interchangeably. Perhaps there is some context in which kushala, I think, is a larger category because it also includes aninja. It also includes the immovable karma. So in some contexts, I think that kushala might be a broader category. But I would have to find you some passages where the subdivision is presented in that way. The immovable karma is a positive type of karma. It is a cause for being born in the higher realms, but it doesn't come from merit in the sense of virtuous actions of body and speech. It comes from merit from, I think, virtue, kushala, from the aninja, in the sense of a type of meditative attainment. So I think that when this third category of karma is included, then there might be some context where this slight technical difference between the two terms appears. But if I had to tell you precisely, I would have to go to the relevant part of the Abhidharma Kosha, and I think actually there is some discussion in that section.
Okay, now what about, I have read some translations, I'm not an expert. What is root of virtue?
Oh, do you mean root of virtue? They say that you need to accumulate roots of virtue. Is it the term?
It's like in the Dusum Shekpe Jalwatam Chechi, Ngowagang La Shukungapade, the Gigewe Sawa di Kunchang, Zanko Shukshi Raptu Ngowarji. In that, those 4 lines.
Well, in Sanskrit, it is Kushala Moolam. So basically, Kushala Moolam and Kushala itself are used like in the same meaning. So when you say, for example, when you dedicate your merit and you say that I dedicate all the roots of the virtue, basically it means that you dedicate the virtue itself. So these terms are synonymical. I mean, like they are synonyms, and you can use both of them. But if you look at the form itself, I mean the word itself, yes, a bit different. So in one case you just say kushalam, in the second case you say kushalam mula. And I wanted to say a couple of words about the translations. Actually, Bibek is quite right. In Tibet, they had very good lexicological method or system for the terms, Sanskrit terms being translated into Tibetan. But if you look at the dictionary, and maybe Mattia remembers that at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, they prepared a dictionary, 11, if I'm not mistaken, 11 volume Tibetan Sanskrit dictionary. And if you look inside, for example, if you if you search for the word Geva, it gives you all of the meanings, all of the Sanskrit terms that were mentioned by Mattia. It's Kushalam, it's Shubham, it's Shreya, it's even Sukham, it's also Shiva, it's also, I mean, like one term has so many Sanskrit equivalents. It's easier with the word Sonam. Usually it's translated as Punya. But with the word Geva, it gives you all of the variety of different Sanskrit terms, and sometimes it's quite difficult to divide the meaning. But in general, I mean that the Sanskrit terms themselves are a little bit difficult to give definitions to these terms and to differentiate the subtle differences between those terms.
For the third type of merit that you were talking about, Mattia, would you call that transcendental merit?
No, it's called immovable. And there's a reason. It has to do with the way it is produced and the way it functions. Aninja. This exists both in Sanskrit and Pali tradition. It's a rather common idea. I think from the Rupa Dhatu upwards, one cannot be born there just by punya, by ordinary merit, but one has to produce these meditative states in order to be born there. I wanted to add one small thing regarding the root of merit. There is one usage of the word kushalamula. Well, two usages. One, I'm more confident that it is really different from just saying kushala. And the second one, I am not entirely sure. So the second one, perhaps I can hear your views, whether you also feel that there could be a difference or not. The first one is when root of merit is actually referring to a virtuous mental state. So when there is the list of mental states, 3 of them come to be called roots of merit, namely non-greed, alobha kushalamulam, non-aversion, advesha kushalamulam, and non-delusion, amoha kushalamulam. So this is one usage where I think maybe there is a slight difference, because I've not found just the word kushala when referring to those as mental states. And the other usage might be maybe when one is referring to having a kind of meritorious seed or specific meritorious deed in the past, which could make something possible in the present. Like the story of, I think, the very last bhikshu that the Buddha allowed to become a bhikshu. It's given as an example of the omniscience of a Buddha, because one of the great Shravakas, despite being an arhat, could not see that this upasaka wanted to become a bhikshu had any kushalamula which could allow him to become a bhikshu. While on the other hand, the Buddha could see it, and seeing this root of merit, decided to allow him to be a bhikshu. So in this case, perhaps it's not a perfect synonym, I think. I don't know if you see what I mean. I think it is a close synonym, but there is a slight difference in this usage.
Well, in the second case, as you told, sometimes it is said, in sutras, they would say that Buddha, for example, would say that this person doesn't have the root of merit, and this person cannot become a monk, because this person lacks the previously accumulated merit. And in this case, as far as I understand, as I can see, they are like synonyms, because if you haven't accumulated a special merit in order to in the future life to become a monk, because becoming a monk considered to be something very virtuous, and you need to have a cause to become a monk. If you haven't accumulated some kind of specific virtue, you cannot become monk in this life. So it's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky. For example, if I have body, if I have all the natural organs in my body
parts,
what divides me from the opposite sex, and if I have wish to become a monk, and I have a preceptor, for example, Buddha or my teacher or somebody else, I do not see how something like lacking Kushala Mula can stop me from becoming a monk. Well, I cannot imagine nowadays such a situation when you come to a preceptor and ask for the vows to be bestowed upon you, and somebody say, "Oh no way, you do not have Kushala Mula." It's kind of probably, well, I didn't know. And even in the sutras, if you look at this situation this way, this person who came to Buddha to become a monk had enough merit to meet Buddha. himself in person, to behold him in front of himself, to talk directly and hear his speech. That's quite a lot of merit, actually. Otherwise, it would not be possible for this person to meet Buddha himself. No way. For example, I myself, it seems to me that never in my previous lives, like many lives before, I didn't have this kind of opportunity. Because
But
otherwise, probably I would be in a better position now, in a better situation now.
But don't you think that's why perhaps the word Kushalamula there means something slightly different? Because I don't know if I'm remembering that story very precisely, but it sounded like you need to have a Kushalamula in the sense of having done something at some point in time which was meritorious in such a specific way as to allow you to do this. So I didn't take it in the sense that this meant that this person has no merit, but rather that this person doesn't have that specific root of merit which makes him suitable to be a bhikshu now. I thought that was the point being discussed, and that's why I thought that perhaps if there is a slight difference between the two terms.
Yeah, most probably there must be some kind of specific cause, specific meritorious action in order to, in this case, in the story of the Buddha, we're talking about a person becoming a monk. So there must be specific cause. Otherwise, there is no reason for Buddha to say that you do not have this kushala mula. But well, I think that in this case, this kushala mula is just a part of kushala, because this is just a specific cause, a meritorious cause, but it is included. It's included into the category of kushala itself. So something like that. And I agree with you that there is three virtuous roots, as you said: non-attachment, non-hatred, and non-ignorance. But basically, it seems to me that it also goes to the same category. Because in order to create some merit, in order to create some virtuous roots, virtue itself, you need to maybe not completely get rid of those hatred and attachment uh, and ignorance. But at the moment when you perform your action, when you perform your virtuous action, you must suppress those three, or at least at the moment, you must have them in latent kind of condition. Otherwise, your action, your kushala mula, will be not kushala mula. It will be akushala mula. It will be something non-virtuous.
But sorry,
It seems to me that it is in this meaning that they say that three virtuous roots. But I'm not sure. That's
I
just
think
my idea.
I'm not sure whether we are saying the same thing, but I think there could be a difference. When one says Kushalamula, perhaps really it doesn't refer to Kushala, to merit in the sense we normally understand it, because it wouldn't fall within Chetana or Chetayitva. It could be accompanied by Chetana, but it's a different type of mental state. It's a different entity, in other words. So perhaps I wonder whether in this usage of the word root of merit, it really indicates that it is somewhat the cause to have the positive intention to then have the merit. You see what I mean?
Yeah. But again, what you're saying now, it's also quite complicated matter, and I hope that you wouldn't, but you did. So, uh, so if you look at the so-called virtual states of mind, which are called also in Tibetan Geva. So are these mental states meritorious or virtual actions? Are they the same or they are different? If they are the same, then there is no need to create any actions, no need to give dana, no need to practice virya, no need to not. I mean, you just can sit and cultivate your virtuous mind. There is no need to do anything at all. Just cultivate virtuous mind. Just think good, and that would be enough. But as far as I can see, it's not the case. It's not the case. Otherwise, there is no need for Buddha to say that you need to practice dana paramita, you need to practice shila paramita, and etc. So there must be difference between those two. And when we talk about the mental states, virtuous mental states, that's one category, that's one thing. When we talk about the virtuous actions that are moved or pushed by the intention, virtuous intentions, that's different. Those are two different things. And I think that it's quite important not to mix them. Bibek, you were saying something. I'm sorry.
Yes, Vivek.
Yeah, someone named me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps I don't know whether it would be useful, but for example, in the path of the Sarvastivadins, for example, one of these Sravaka schools, they divide the path, let's say, before the Darsana Marga or the path of seeing, into two mainly Moksha Bhagya and Nirveda Bhagya, and they have a specific roles. I mean, and then the practices corresponding to Moksha Bhagya, Nirveda Bhagya, which means, like, let's say something you do that is conducive to the liberation, and something you do that is conducive for penetration, let's say, the penetration into the nature of reality. So perhaps in terms of the merit too, because mostly the discussions about these two categories are also about the kushala mula, that you kind of plant something, the root of kushala or wholesome in those paths, and they correspond to actually to the let's say path of accumulation, which is one of the earliest stage, and then the path of application. So there are specific things that you do, for example, the dana and so forth, or you practice Sruta Chinta Bhavanamai Pragya in those part of the path, and that helps you to bring certain fruit. And that fruit, it is conducive for liberation or conducive for penetration, so on and so forth. But so far, I too haven't seen anything very directly related with what we are discussing. Let's say why someone is given the ordination because that person had created some kind of positive things in the past. That could be anything, and the least I could remember that is mentioned is that there was one guy who went as a pig, not another human being, or he was not creating it consciously, but that sentient being was going around a stupa, being chased by another animal, I think, and then that person had created enough merit, or let's say kusalamula, to be ordained during the time of the Buddha, let's say. So I cannot offer you a very specific discussion on this, but at least I could offer this some insight into the path, how path and the different types of merits are divided in order to obtain the fruit, corresponding fruits.
Vivek, this is one of the examples I always try to avoid. In that example, there are actually two kind of similar stories about one person being chased around stupa and this way accumulating merit. Oh, there is one story about a bug an insect that was sitting on a let's say a list or a piece of wood, something, and it also circumambulated the stupa and also created some merit. What does it mean? Basically, what this example tells us, that even if we do not have any intention, we can perform merit. Is it possible at all? If I do not have intention to do something good, and physically my body, well, unintentionally, like just somehow does something good, does it count? Does it falls on my account? I mean, like in my bank, can I take this merit to my merit bank? It would be very, very dangerous for us. Of course, I understand that they say in the scriptures that some places, like for example, stupas or Buddha himself or the Buddha's Sharira, they have some kind of special blessing that the person or animal or anybody who sees Buddha himself, his stupa, can feel the blessing and can accumulate the merit by just seeing and touching and circumambulating the place or the spot. And I think in this case, that's what actually worked here, because this animal didn't have any intention. And for us being Buddhist, this could be kind of uncomfortable, that if you do not have intention and still your action is virtuous, it will lead us far, far of the shore.
But sorry, I think there are some complications, even further complications there. One is that, in my understanding, according to several systems of Abhidharma, at least Sarvastivada and I think Yoga Achara, actually there is no moment of mind which is devoid of intention. So, strictly speaking, each moment of mind is producing some kind of karma. Chetana is one of the sarvatragas. So, this is one point. Of course, this doesn't solve the question there about the animals doing something without a virtuous intention. Why should that be considered as virtue? Maybe one thing is the idea that when one encounters a Buddha, for example, even someone who has no idea of who a Buddha is going to develop a prasada, a kind of clear faith in the mind. So automatically a kind of positive mind. So maybe something along those lines. But of course, this is something just very speculative. Who knows how that works? But this is a point about merit, which not merit, just karma in general, that I realized maybe it's not really considered very often, the fact that actually every moment of mind has karma in the sense of chetana. Chetana is defined as mental karma, manas karma, and is sarvatraga. All the moments of mind have it. So when you were talking earlier about action, if you restrict it to body and speech, then it works. But if by action you are more or less rendering karma, then it should be the case that there is not a single moment of mind which is without it, which is yes, it makes karma look a bit different from how we normally look at it. Also, intention, we may always think it in very explicit, recognizable terms, but when we are talking of intention at the level of mental states, is something quite difficult to recognize, because we are talking about momentary entities, and we could have many different kinds of intention, even while consciously we think we are just having one type. So I think that is also something to be considered.
But in the previous case, what I was saying that we need to differentiate between the mental action and the verbal action and the physical actions. They are not the same, and we cannot do without the physical and verbal actions. That's the point I was saying about. And well, you are right. The so-called mind factors, ever present mental factors. Yes, it's Chetana must be one of the ever present mental factors, but it's also kind of difficult. For example, if there is a moment of pratyaksha, if you just see something and being pratyaksha, I do not have even judgment about something good or bad or anything else, and I do have Chetana. Well, that's very good way to accumulate merit. Just look, for example, at Buddhist statue or at the stupa or something else. Do nothing, relax, and have accumulation of merit. That's also one of the. I didn't know what to answer you, but it seems to me that there is some cases that not easy for me to understand or to explain.
Well, I think probably it's not just for you. I think that is really like what you just brought up, for example. That becomes a big problem for followers of Dharmakirti, because then they distinguish between two types of objects, the grahya and adhyavaseya. And in that way, they can speak of conceptuality and non-conceptuality basically coexisting in the same moment. And that gives a rather different perspective on the example you just brought up. I think Dharmottara and Jnana Shrimitra, for example, follow this kind of subdivision. So that is quite complicated. But the example you gave is about very explicit or recognizable type of intention. I think when we're speaking of intention in this way, there could still be something positive, but it could very often be just a neutral type of intention, which therefore is not meritorious. So this is also one way to understand it. Is the type of karma which is going to result in the neutral Vedana as its vipaka. So maybe that could also explain those cases where there is the Chetana, but the Chetana cannot be regarded as that which is to be experienced as pleasure, or that which is to be experienced as suffering. So third kind, maybe that's still, there can still be an intention, but not with the somewhat difficult to understand consequence that even when we seem to look at something neutrally, we are going to produce merit. So maybe that's something to take into account. I don't know if you think it is.
No, well, probably all the cases you are mentioning could be some kind of merit, but it seems to me what we are talking about usually in the context of Buddhist practice is not that kind of sporadic or kind of how do you say? How do you call it? Just let me a second. So I think that basically when we talk in the context of practice, it's very intentional practice, very intentional virtue. So not that those cases of virtue, when you look at something and it also could be or could not be or virtue, or it may be a neutral mental action. What we talk here is a persistent and very intentional virtuous action or virtuous practice, and not only mental, as I was saying, not only mental, but quite often much more physical or verbal action. That's what I wanted to say. Otherwise, yes. And by the way, I found an example of using of the Kushala Mula as synonym of the Kushala itself. For example, in Mahavyutpati, there is a phrase that is translated into Tibetan as Gevetsavana Chumisa. Gevetsavanam Chumisa. It means the roots of the virtue never could be destroyed. So you will have to experience the fruits of the fruits of those actions. And in Sanskrit, it says something like avipranasha kushala mulanam. So it means that they are not spoiled in some meaning, in some way. So in this case, it seems to me they are completely synonymous. I mean, like kushala and Kushala Mula. But of course, there are some different instances of different usages of those terms.
Okay, I think I know how to distinguish them in just in terms of grammar. There is one difference, I think, that kushala can be used as a qualifier, and therefore could even not referring necessarily as an act of merit, but something which is virtue can also be called kushala, and it could, if it were something feminine, it would become kushala, etc. But kushala mula has to be used as a substantive. I think this is one difference.
Oh, that's. I didn't think that it's the case, because in many cases, kushala is also used as a noun. I mean, it's not just adjective.
Yes, but
I think
it can be used as an adjective. That is a difference.
Yes, of course, in many cases.
But, as an adjective.
For example, when you say that I need to accumulate some merit or some virtue, in this case, it cannot be an adjective. It must be something substantive. It must be a noun. So anyway, that's not quite important. I think it's just a small case.
My point was not that kushala. Of course, kushala can be used as a substantive, but kushala mula is always a substantive. It cannot be used as an adjective. So this, I think, marks a difference in the usage, because, for example, when you're describing mental states, even in the classification of mental states, one would have to say that 10 of them are kushalaha. Mm-hmm. You couldn't do that with the kushala mula. Probably wouldn't make sense.
Yes, it would be strange. Yeah, it would be strange. Yeah, it would be strange. Yeah. Yeah.
So that maybe is a way to differentiate, although it's mostly about how the grammar is.
Yes, if you talk from the point of view of the terms, yes. But if you talk about the point from the point of view of the subject itself, it must remain the same. I mean, if we are talking about the virtue itself, virtue that that we are to be, that we are supposed to accumulate, then I think it must be naming the same idea.
Yeah.
I
have one slight concern, because I have noticed that we don't have any questions. So I wonder whether we have gone too technical. And
do we have any listeners at all, or it's just three of us?
Bem, you mentioned about the root of virtue or root of merit is it's not destroyable. Did I hear that correctly?
No. I didn't say that. That. Actually, it's also complicated question. Yeah, Mattia, you were saying something. Mattia.
We cannot hear you, Mattia.
Oh, sorry. No, I think that Ram was asking you that just because you quoted the Mahavyutpatti, the Avipranasha Kusharmulana.
Oh, yeah. Avipranasha. Yeah. Well, it doesn't mean this. It means that if you have accumulated karma, for example, some merit, it means that it will not be spoiled. You will have to experience the results, the fruits of your action, be it virtuous or unvirtuous. No matter how much time passes, how many lives you live through, in one moment you will have to experience the result of your action. What is meant here, and that's what is good question. It reminded me in Bodhicharya Avatara, and also in Madhyamaka Avatara. It is said that you can destroy your merit by the moment of anger. If you experience anger, so accumulation of merit that you have done will be destroyed if you do not dedicate the merit. So that's why in Mahayana Buddhism we say that it's necessary to dedicate the merit. Otherwise, if you get angry, one moment of anger or one moment of hatred destroys a lot of merit. And especially if you are angry at somebody who is higher than you in the spiritual status, for example, at a bodhisattva who is higher than you, then you destroyed quite a lot, something like merit accumulated in, if I'm not mistaken, 1,000 kalpas. That's quite a lot. That's why in Buddhism it is said that you need to dedicate your merit, because when you dedicate your merit, it's same like mixing one drop of water in the ocean of water. So until the ocean dries up, until that moment your merit will not be exhausted. But I didn't know, Mattia, do you agree with this Buddhist idea? For example, I did something good and then I got angry. In what way it destroys my merit? For example, I helped somebody and I performed a lot of work. For example, somebody is building something and I worked with these people for like 1 month, and then I just became angry. Just one moment, with just one very small human moment, how it destroys my merit. Actually, being a very angry person, I get angry all the time. And probably I need to stop accumulating any merit, because all of the merit that I so painstakingly accumulate is destroyed all the time. There is no reason for me, no benefit for me to do any virtuous actions.
But you dedicate them, so you're okay.
Sometimes I forgot. I forget. Sometimes I forget to dedicate my merit.
I agree in principle, because for the simple reason that this is one of the areas where, like, I think we know it's not within the perception of ordinary people, and then that's where faith comes into play. So this, the extremely subtle phenomena, one of them is the precise workings of karma. So that's where I just trust what I find in the texts and go accordingly. That is about it. I could not prove it to you, except by way of proving that the Buddha is omniscient, and therefore one has to trust on certain areas that one cannot check directly. But that's how I look at that kind of explanation. And that, I think, applies to many of the explanations for the result of karma, because many of them are based on analogy. Like, if you do such and such a karma of speech, then you'll have bad breath in your future lifetime. It's not something I can check very easily, but there's lots of very similar statements, as you know. So that's where I think it's not an empirical matter at this stage. Maybe it will be if I succeed, when I succeed to become a bodhisattva on the 10th bhumi, I'll get a better idea. But at this point, it's just something quite mysterious, how merit is going to work. And therefore, I would just rely on what we have in the text. But I have a question, actually, if it is okay for Ram. Can I ask a question to Ram?
Sure.
Okay. My question is, so today's meeting, conversation is called Misconceptions about Merits. Now, we had a discussion about merits, like about the nature of merit and so on and so forth. But I imagine that if you chose the title Misconceptions about Merit, there was something in your mind that you regarded as being a misconception which you wished to address. And even
Yes.
if we have done it indirectly, I would like to know what that was.
Okay, so actually, that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. But since the conversation became very interesting, we focus on several other things, especially the definitions of and the differences of different terminologies. So one of my great teachers, Pacharam Vichai, he gave an example which I vaguely remember. It's pretty close. Like if you go to the temple and you give 50 rupees and you ask Buddha for 5 million rupees, is this, I mean, what is this meritorious or is it not? That will it bring any result? And then the main point is, okay, how do we differentiate what is meritorious and what is not meritorious? Can we just go by the 6 parameters or 10 virtuous, non-virtuous actions, or can you give some guidelines for us practitioners so we can take it as a basis for practice in your view? Mattia?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the example you gave is pertinent because one can do something meritorious for not necessarily for liberation. So my answer to that is that it's not a black and white situation. One can perform something which is meritorious, but depending on the attitude and the actual intent, the level of to which that is virtuous can vary very greatly. So if somebody who does a meritorious action for a worldly reason still can be an act of merit, and there's many stories like that in the Avadana. Somebody offering a certain type of dana and then making a certain aspiration. I think there are cases where the aspirations are actually within samsara. Then there is somebody doing a virtuous act with a mind of the wish to go out of samsara. And then there is somebody doing a virtuous action with the mind of bodhicitta. And even within that, there's going to be a difference, well, more than one difference, according to probably the level of one's realization of the nature of reality, as well as the strength and vastity of one's actual aspiration. So I don't think it's a black and white situation, frankly. So let's say I give 50 baht because I want 5 million baht. Okay, maybe not terrible, I don't even know what I'm going to use those 5 million baht. In fact, we do that all the time in some sense, because one of the purposes in the Bodhisattva path to practice dana paramita is to encounter circumstances which are, let's say, pleasant enough that we can continue with our practice. And so it's not really necessarily, of course, then with the view of eventually becoming a Buddha. So the example you gave, in a sense, doesn't have enough information.
Yes, thank you. I also recall I believe, if of course these are translated names, which of course are my, again, bad memory. The Sutras of the Three Heaps, or the Confession of a Bodhisattva Downfall, and it refers to extremely small amount of merit, and it can be used for perhaps doing a great thing. What's your view on that?
Sorry, you're
Did you hear me? You're muted, sorry.
okay. I'm okay. Now I'm unmute. Well, there is one principle regarding merit, and that's actually one of the reasons why the example of the seed and the fruit is used. That a small action in future can have a very vast maturation. So this, I think, comes into play when one speaks about small roots of merit, maybe. That there's this point about the karma vipaka, the maturation of karma, which is also something difficult to conceive. And there are actually, yes, now that I remember, there's stories about someone offering just a little bit of gruel to the bodhisattva in his previous lifetimes, and that had tremendous results. Yes, there are such cases. So because what causes something to be meritorious is also the recipient. For example, different recipients will have different impact on the maturation of that particular action. So yes, there's so many things to take into account regarding any activity, except the only thing that seems safe, and which is also at the basis of, let's say, the idea that anything done with bodhicitta is immensely meritorious, is that the main point is intention. So bodhicitta is meritorious because it's the vastest possible intention. That's why. So I think that at least that's the way I look at it. I don't think I can really even remember the descriptions of, like, you do this and this is going to happen, or really understand why it is going to be like that. On the other hand, these guidelines about intention are the key in terms of how one approaches merit. That's at least how I would look at it.
Okay, last point, maybe Bem, and of course followed by Mattia, hopefully briefly. What about the guidelines for how to classify, or would you say the 6 parameters, or 10 non-virtuous and virtuous actions, or something like this? Which one do you prefer personally?
I'm sorry, prefer what?
For accumulation of merit, for example, or for performing meritorious task, what do you use to check? The 6 parameters, or the 10 non-virtuous actions, 10 virtuous actions, or
Actually, it was never a question for me, because I never gave a serious thought to what kind of practice I would like to do. I try to follow the advice of my teachers, and basically they say whenever you can do something good, just do that good as you are able to, as that suits your capacities. And so actually never name my virtuous action if I have any like practice of some paramita or something else, because it would be a bit pretentious and a bit too difficult for me if I give some 50 bahts and hope for 5 millions, and I name it Dana Paramita, and I also imagine it being a cause for the Buddhahood. Too much of mental work to me, for me. So that's why if I can do something good, I just try to do it, and usually I do it on very small scale, but I try to do it whenever I have opportunity. Then just bringing the intention again to the fore or our discussion, I would like to bring very popular Tibetan story. They have it in almost all of the Tibetan commentaries like Lamrim and etc. There was a geshe. Some say that he was geshe, some people say that he was not geshe, no difference. There was a Tibetan guy who visited Lhasa. He came to the capital of Tibet, and there is a main temple, Jokhan. And he went to the main temple of Lhasa, and there is the main statue of Buddha in the main object of veneration in that temple, a statue of Buddha. So he didn't have any offering to do to make to that statue of Buddha. So he took off his shoes and put them on the altar. He said, "Well, they are good shoes, and I offer them to you." And he went away. Then the person who was looking after the altar and after the statue came inside and saw that somebody put very dirty shoes on the altar. And he took it away because he thought that it's very disgusting. It's not good. It's very unvirtuous thing to do, to put some dirty shoes on the altar. So you see, the same action, the same physical action differs. I mean, the intention in this case comes forward. That's the main point. The same action could be judged from 2 points of view and could be completely different in 2 cases. And I have another very funny story. I will bring it again because I have used it before in our previous talk, but I think that Mattia didn't hear it. So usually in Tibetan monasteries, monks would recite Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra, the Heart Sutra of Prajnaparamita. Why? There is a story. There was a lady who came to a monastery and made quite profuse offering to the community of the monks. But what she prayed, she said, "Oh, may by the power of this giving, by the power of this generosity, these 300 monks next life are born as my buffaloes, my bulls." So you see, in order to avoid this kind of not good, not meritorious intentions, monks usually before the prayers in the beginning of the prayer session would recite Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra. So I was told by one of my teachers. So you see, if you look from outside, it's quite meritorious action. This lady came to a monastery to feed the monks. But what she had inside, what was her deep intention, was to collect some benefit from this action. 5 million bahts, Ram. So seems like it's very important to first of all, it's very important to have this meritorious intention. That's why we talk about the intention. That's why we talk continuously, always, constantly talk about motivation in Buddhism, because virtuous action, verbal and physical, are very important. But what's more important is the thought, is the mind you have at the moment when you perform this or that action, virtuous and non-virtuous and any.
Thank you, Bem. Okay, Mattia, last chance.
Yeah, what you were asking earlier brought something to my mind, which it reminded me of this Japanese anime and also video games where there's martial arts. Like when somebody is fighting somebody else, before they're going to do the move, they declare it. Like, for example, or you can, and then they throw a ball of fire. And I don't think that one should approach one's Buddhist practice in that way. Like when we
Dana paramita,
exactly.
Shila paramita, Prajna paramita.
I think that if you do that also in a fight, you usually get beaten up if you wait and actually say each move and wait. It's not. It's like grammar actually. When we speak, it's not like before we learn grammar, but it's not like before every word we say subject, and then we say that word, and then we say object, and we say that. If we do like that, it becomes absurd, and our speech is very slow. We just know that to have a kind of general framework within which our activity or language happens. And I think that's how, at least that's how I would approach the paramitas or the kushalamulas, etc.
Yes,
Oh,
and
that was nice. That was nice example. I will follow this example all the way. Dana paramita. Whenever I come to a temple, I will just scream on the top of my lungs, Dana paramita.
so I think maybe in conclusion, would it be right for me to say like we basically try to stick to at least the minimum, the 5 precepts, something like that? Would that be fair enough?
Well, it's again very complicated. Buddhism is so complicated that I must follow some other religion.
All right. Okay.
So if Matthew was saying about bodhicitta, if you have bodhicitta in your mind, if you have this intention or this mind of bodhicitta in your continuum, it means that any action that you do for the sake of all the sentient beings in order to obtain the Buddhahood is possible, is plausible, is acceptable. It's legit. And there is,
Okay.
of course, that example of a person who is traveling by a ship,
Mhm.
on a boat or something like that, and there was an evil person who wanted to kill 300 people, that merchants that were traveling on that ship or say boat or anything else. So this person had this intention, and Bodhisattva, who was also traveling on the same vessel, he understood the intention. I didn't know how. Probably he had some clairvoyant. He was clairvoyant, or he understood this intention, and he killed that person. And there is also this explanation that from one point of view, being in virtue of killing, he had to experience that fruit, that result of that action. But because it was the bodhicitta intention, because he understood that this person will accumulate a lot of non-virtue by killing those merchants, from this point of view, it was merit. So if you judge like this, it becomes if you have genuine, sincere, true bodhicitta in your mind, almost every action. I say almost just to excuse myself, but to be frank and honest, it means that any action you take, as long as you have this true bodhicitta, not artificial, not some kind of pretense. But if whatever you do is for the benefit of all of the beings, and it's really true intention, sincere intention. Any action you do must be virtuous, must be for the benefit of the sentient beings. So there is some danger, it seems to me, for people to misunderstand this point. And if you just imagine that you have true and genuine bodhicitta, and then you start to perform all kinds of action that will lead you astray, it seems to me. But otherwise, it must be something like that. It must be if you. That's why you need to generate bodhicitta in your mind, because
Okay.
then whatever you do just for the sake of the sentient beings, just for the good of those living beings.
On that note, that's a good conclusion, I believe, and it's also we actually took quite a bit of time. So maybe we will go to the dedication, or we will make the announcements for upcoming events. So we'll have all Chinese. This event will be fully in Chinese. It's coming up. Brother Chong. Okay. So now we'll go to dedication. Maybe Ajahn Mattia, would you be kind enough to say the dedication in Sanskrit and maybe a brief translation? Not this
यदवाप्तं
one.
मया पुण्यं स्तुत्वा त्वां स्तुतिभाजनं निमित्तबन्धनापेतं भूयात् तेनाखिलं जगत्. By the merit that I've obtained by praising you who are worthy of praise, may by that the whole world be free from the bondage of signs, not science, but signs.
Thank you, Ajahn. Bem, please. In Tibetan, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Zamba judo zamba babo gamba da kundo zamba de yande jende de da gege jaza da la je geba de da jera to. So I dedicate this merit the same way as Manjunatha and Samantha Bhatta did before. Before in the previous times, I also dedicate to follow their example.
Okay. So sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it. May all beings be well, happy, and safe. Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn Mattia. Thank you, Ben. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you.